I know that the McGill Summer School never shies away at all from tackling the difficult issues, and this year is clearly no exception, as you have set yourself the task of defining the obstacles of economic recovery. Fair play to you. So we've certainly set the bar very high this year. But I'm very pleased to be given the opportunity to outline my party's position on what needs to happen if we are to recover economically. And nobody will be surprised to learn that Sinn Féin's firm belief is that a sustainable economic recovery will require an all-Ireland approach and bilateral measures by the administrations north and south. But that belief isn't simply born out of our political desire to see the reunification of Ireland, a desire that none of us make any apologies for. It is a practical, thought-out and common-sense approach to tackling our economic problems, and it is the only long-term solution. The simple fact is that we live on a tiny island, and it just doesn't make sense to have two competing economies in a country this size. Since the Good Friday Agreement, trade between North and South has steadily increased. Thousands of people live their lives in one jurisdiction, yet shop, study or work in the other. Partition creates impediments to economic development at a substantial cost to the economy. And this isn't just a Sinn Féin belief. It's a belief which is shared by an increasing number of peoples from all walks of life right across the island. In recent weeks, the IBEC-CBI Joint Business Committee sent out a very clear message to both administrations on the island that a focused approach on all-Ireland single economy is the best way forward for economic regeneration. Other business leaders across Ireland also accept that all Ireland makes sense. They realise that two separate economies of an island of under 6 million people, now more than ever, will only serve to hamper efforts to revitalise the economy. They recognise that back-to-back developments will lead only to wasteful spending upon duplication of services. Given the current global economic crisis, to have two health services, two education services, two transport services, two currencies, and so forth, and an Ireland this size is nothing short of economic madness. Continuous fluctuation between the two economies is also of no strategic benefit to anyone. It's time that the political administrations started to heed the message from the business community. We should be examining new avenues of all-Ireland cooperation and the establishment of a strong Ireland economy. The historic lack of joined-up thinking from successive British and Irish governments has resulted in viable businesses floundering on both sides of the border, and I'm sure many of you would know people who have been constantly trying to establish their business, yet the constant fluctuation in areas of VAT, corporation tax, excise duties and current variations have rendered it almost impossible for them to continue and have their business survive. This is a reality which is recognised by other nations in Europe. That is why countries like France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Poland and the Scandinavian nations ensure that VAT rates between neighbouring states are harmonised. Ireland is the only place to buck the trend, and on this small island we have a VAT rate of 15% in the north and 21.5% in the south. With such disparities, it's little wonder that border businesses in particular are being decimated. For too long it has been a merry-go-round of boom and bust for businesses on both sides of the border. And I have to take particular issue with people like Brian Lenihan, who famously accused Irish shoppers of being unpatriotic by spending their money in the north. It is to rein in the banks and financial institutions that the government of which Brian Lennon is a member should be focused. It was his government's economic policy, combined with the corporation greed on behalf of the banks and developers, which created the ludicrous situation, and to try and put further financial pressure on ordinary struggling families is nothing short of disgraceful. If government ministers want to show that their patriotic fuse is more than just skin deep, then they should become the process of building, and they should become members of the community that's going to be involved in the process of building an all-Ireland economic and political framework. That is the only way we are going to secure the economic future of this island, and I believe that the case has already been made on this issue. Working in collaboration, Dublin and Belfast can eliminate waste and duplication, thereby freeing up essential resources for frontline services and building social and economic prosperity for all. We have witnessed the creation of the All-Ireland Single Energy Market, which provides a competitive, sustainable and reliable economic and gas market across the island. It is accepted that it will eventually deliver long-term economic and social benefits to communities right across the island. Tourism Ireland is an all-Ireland body designed to efficiently promote Ireland abroad and has had much success in source market across the globe. The tourism sector remains of critical importance to Ireland's economic well-being, and the service sector relies heavily upon it. Intertrade Ireland, established by the Good Friday Agreement, is developed north-south business opportunities and has, since 2003, assisted businesses across the island in creating hundreds and hundreds of jobs and gathering hundreds of millions of euros in trade. We have seen a strategic all-Ireland collaborative approach with billions of euros committed to developing the road infrastructure across the island. Nobody would argue that this does not make good economic sense. If we are to emerge from the economic crisis, we need to build on that kind of cooperation, not retreat it and treat it as if it somehow is going to create some damage to each other's economy. Not retreat from it, as some would advocate, and I can only believe that people who do advocate such are doing so from a selfish, political and unsubstantiated reasons. To those northern politicians, and I thought one would be here today and obviously they're not, who for narrow political reasons are advocating cutting backs on all-Ireland projects, I would urge them to reconsider the following. The Irish Government's proposed National Assets Management Agency will control an estimated 15 to 20 billion euros of assets in the north, making it the single investor in the north. How it plans to manage these assets will have a massive impact on the north. We need an agreed plan, not only to manage these assets, but to build and manage the all-Ireland economy. Both jurisdictions face public spending cuts, with An Bord Sniff Nua in the south and an expected public spending cut following the next Westminster election in the north. We simply cannot afford the luxury of two separate administrations, two separate administrative systems for an Ireland our size. This is not only an ideological position, but a very practical one. The system we have are loaded with inefficiencies and waste. The message from the McGill Summer School should be that in Ireland we will face into the economic crisis together by deciding that we are going to direct significant resources on sustaining existing jobs here across the 32 counties. Such an approach will not require that we abandon our efforts at attracting foreign direct investment, but it will recognise that in the immediate and short term, there is little prospects for such investment on a significant scale. I would contend then that we should invest in recovery by identifying and resourcing initiatives that will sustain existing employment, because in the event of an economic upturn, jobs that are lost now will be all the more difficult and expensive to reinstate in the future. We should be looking at cooperation and integration in other sectors, such as the university and Universities Ireland, in the area of third-level education, with a particular focus on the knowledge economy. We should be building all Ireland agricultural sector to fully exploit Ireland's unique competitive advantage in grass-based agriculture. There is scope for all Ireland agriculture as a single unit to negotiate a common Irish position within the CAP or within the EU Common Fishery Policy. We should be fully exploiting the opportunities afforded to the higher value food processing industry, niche markets of organic farming, in which both parts of Ireland remain far behind in comparison with their EU counterparts, and GM-free markets demands are all examples of neglected growth and development in a partitioned Ireland. The potential of the fishing industry and the development of our unique resources for agricultural, fishing and fish processing and marine-based facilities is another example. There are many, many more. Not least of all, the need to introduce a single currency across the island. Sinn Féin recognises the potential to create jobs in the agri-food sector. My party colleague, Arthur Morgan, TD, is currently drafting a report on how to expand employment in the agri-food sector for the Oireachtas Committee on Enterprise, Trade and Employment. If we are to recover economically and as a nation, the administrations, north and south, need to build on the lessons learned from the cooperation which we have already shown and have had considerable success. As I totally rejected in the statement when it was made at the time by the Minister of State, Martin Manstra, that the recession makes Irish unity less attractive. Does Martin Manstra really believe that Ireland is the only country on earth that could not sustain itself as an independent sovereign nation? I believe it is clear from everything that I have said already that the reverse is actually the case. It's about time the Irish political leadership threw off the yoke of inferiority and started projecting a positive, can-do image of Ireland that will motivate instead of deflating people's aspirations. And with all due respect, I don't believe any of us should take any political or economic advice from an administration who refused to take heed of the economic danger signs that led us into the biggest economic disaster in history. The reality is that the full potential of Ireland and this island in terms of economic development cannot be realised while we have division, duplication and disruption because of a British-imposed border. Real economic recovery will require an all-Ireland approach. And to use the old adage, united we stand, divided we fall. Go míle maith agad.